Good morning, everyone. My name is Fadim Shantaf. I'm the Communication Manager at LIFE. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate LIFE USAID achievements. Madam Ambassador Dorothy Shea, Mission Director, Eileen Devitt, Economic Growth Office Director, Douglas Balko, thank you for honoring this ceremony with your presence. Let us start our event with the US and the Lebanese anthems. Please take the opportunity to watch a 5-minute video that will tell our life story.
LIFE USAID began its investments in 2016, which aimed to increase inclusivity among the estimated 500,000 unbanked microenterprises across Lebanon. It did this by assisting members of the Lebanese Microfinance Association. Parallel to that, LIFE USAID worked with Lebanese NGOs to provide financial literacy and grants of fixed assets.
لجأت لتدريب في إطار مشروع لايف اللي هو ممول من قبل اليو اس ايد، وهونيك بلش المشوار.
بس جيبوا لي المكانات، أنا رجعت بديت من تاني وجديد وعم بشتغل وشغل معي ناس.
LIFE has assiduously worked to ensure that women and persons with disability were included to the full extent possible.
شافوا شو بيشتغل وشافوا شو طموحي وشو بدي أنا قدروا يرجعوا يخلوني أوقف على الجاي من أول وجديد.
These programs went on uninterrupted until October 17, 2019. Lebanon was devastated, but what most citizens consider to be its greatest catastrophe since the Civil War, a precipitous financial collapse.
نحن الصراحه يعني ما معنا شيء قاعدوا اكل ما فينا نجيب خبز ما فينا نجيب ولا فينا نجيب شيء
40% of microfinance clients today need food subsidy.
LIFE USAID immediately responded to this challenge provided grants to select microfinance partners, which enabled them to assist needy small businesses with grace periods and interest-free obligations for loan payments.
من كل أزمة نخلق فرصة.
10 months later, Lebanon suffered the trauma of the August 4th, 2020 port explosion.
من هون بلشت الفكرة. تعاوننا مع لايف، كان الهدف نوصل لهودي الاشخاص اللي هن متضررين عندهم مشاريع صغيره، ندعمهم ليرجعوا يقفوا على رجليهم ويرجعوا يجيبوا المعدات اللي ضربت عندهم واللي خسروها.
بفضلهم هن قدرت ارجع واقف على اجري من اول وجديد وارجع مشي المحل.
بدي اشكر وكاله التنميه الامريكيه، بفضل دعمها قدرنا اليوم نشتغل مع شركائنا لدعم الاشخاص يلي اما اعيقوا بسبب الانفجار وفقدوا اشغالهم او كان عندهم اعاقه وفقدوا اشغالهم.
Life has been led by events to respond to the consequent tragedy. In concert with that evolution will be its emergence as a modern state, driven by the adoption of new technologies.
قدرنا نحصل على معدات متطورة تقدر تساعدنا أن نطور شغلنا كسرعة، ككواليتي، كإنتاج.
هنحصل على المكانات اللي حنطور فيهم صناعة الطاقة الشمسية، نصير نصنعها محلياً لنوفر على الناس بهالوضع.
We share with life our conviction that the marriage between the great new technologies emanating from the United States and the potential creativity of the Lebanese people will bring Lebanon back into the sunlight of peace and prosperity.
We will continue to stand by you. We're in this together, and together we can build a stronger and more prosperous Lebanon for future generations.
Through it all, we're in this together.
Madam Ambassador, a special thanks to you and the American people for your continuous support to Lebanon and specifically to women, youth, and people with disabilities. We are delighted to have you among us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And I'll just take my mask off for the remarks, if that's appropriate. Wow, I just have a little tear in my eye watching that video because it's so impressive what we have done in partnership with Life and all of you around this room. So good morning to you, our partners. And I want to thank you for those of you who are able to join us in person and those of you who are joining us virtually online. Chief of Party David Holdridge, Lebanese Union for Persons with Disabilities, Sylvana Lakkis, EMKAN Executive General Manager, Dr. Mayada Baydas, Michel Daher Social Foundation President, Marleine Daher, and Majmouaa CEO, Youssef Fawaz, and many others from your teams behind you. It is really a pleasure to be with you and to celebrate our collective achievements, supporting microenterprises and microfinance in Lebanon over the last 5 years. Our successful partnership has helped build better businesses and improve the livelihoods of thousands of people. And against the backdrop of such difficult circumstances, it's really phenomenal. The beginning of 2021, USAID launched its new economic growth policy, which elevates the need for inclusive and resilient growth to reduce poverty and achieve sustainable development results. While this policy is new, the US government through USAID has long made developing and advancing small businesses in Lebanon a priority. For example, in 1997, USAID was the first donor to engage microfinance institutions and support the microfinance sector in Lebanon. A key milestone for USAID in this sector was to help form and advance the Lebanese Microfinance Association, which remains a strong advocate for microfinance institutions today. Over the past 5 years, our efforts to promote economic growth proved critical to microenterprises that faced these multiple crises in Lebanon. When Lebanese small businesses struggled to adapt to the effects of the economic crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the Beirut port blast, the US government through USAID stepped in and helped these businesses that were on the verge of closure. This support enabled these small businesses to continue to supply needed goods and services to their communities and to keep their employees on the payroll. Since 2016, the Livelihoods and Inclusive Finance Expansion, or LIFE project, reached around 40,000 underserved Lebanese microenterprises, 40% of which are women-led. Through this project, USAID provided a range of assistance services to enable microenterprise owners to take greater control of their economic lives, move out of poverty, and contribute to local community development. At a time when commercial lending came to a complete halt, USAID partnered with several microfinance institutions to facilitate the distribution of more than 14,000 microloans to microenterprises. So I want to salute the efforts of our partners who leveraged these investments in the microfinance sector and lent approximately $34 million of their own funds. Through their diligent efforts, we widened the reach of microfinance lending and made it easier for agribusiness, tourism, and technology companies, including many who are owned by women and young entrepreneurs, to access reliable and competitive credit. These loans helped microenterprises improve their income by an average of 20%, and they created more than 500 jobs, and they have preserved thousands of others amid these crises. Beyond the microfinance services, the LIFE project established 3 livelihoods revitalization hubs in the North, South, and Bekaa Valley regions. Reaching areas of the country with untapped economic potential, these hubs united various NGOs providing a range of services to microenterprises, from business development to small in-kind grants. Livelihoods assistance under these hubs reached around 25,000 beneficiaries who have seen an average 30% increase in sales and 15% reduction in business-related costs. For example, the Bekaa Valley Hub helped almost 200 micro businesses launch virtual platforms, including one woman entrepreneur who was able to grow her soap making business by 20% after receiving social media training and equipment. In the South, the hub promoted Saida as a tourism destination by providing business training and equipment to local craftspeople, food vendors, and tour guides to deliver high-quality products and services to visitors. USAID helped thousands of businesses shift their products and services to online platforms to maintain sales through its support of these hubs during the initial phases of the COVID-19 outbreak. One example that resonated with me was when we partnered with a gym owner in the South who started coaching her clients online and virtually during the pandemic. These hubs have touched the lives and saved livelihoods of so many, and they've set an example for how the private sector can come together and play such a significant role in building the foundation for stable communities. I'd also like to highlight the active role LIFE played in the country's recovery after the Port of Beirut blast. Within 2 weeks, LIFE reached out to microenterprises that were on the verge of closing or had closed because of the extensive damage they suffered. Through its partners, LIFE provided technical support, in-kind grants, affordable loans, and psychological counseling to more than 350 microenterprise owners, including 40 people with existing or new physical disabilities resulting from the blast. I'm pleased to report that all the businesses supported by Life in the port area through this program are still operating. And what really makes me proud is seeing firsthand the impact Life loans have had on borrowers. I recently walked through one of the affected areas in the blast zone and met with several business owners assisted by Life. I was impressed by their and your resilience despite the severe losses and your heartbreaking stories. There was a restaurant owner also in Gemeza, a car mechanic, a sound engineer. Each of these individuals maximized the use of our assistance to rebuild their businesses and sustain or improve the lives of their families. So, thank you all for being here today and for your partnership. Helping small businesses successfully navigate this economic crisis environment is a considerable challenge in itself, but we have made such great achievements together. In fact, our joint efforts not only had a positive impact on the financial well-being of disadvantaged microenterprises, but they also helped them weave their way through the wider economy. The fact that these microenterprises have become self-reliant and are able to generate incomes beyond the life of the project is certainly worthy of praise. I'm particularly proud of our microfinance partnerships, which remained active amid a collapse in the country's financial sector. We look forward to continuing our strong support for Lebanon's private sector, especially in the micro and small enterprises field, which are instrumental, of course, and will continue to be to Lebanon's economic recovery. I wish you all the best. Forza Saida.
Thank you, Ambassador. David, on behalf of Life team, I would like to thank you for believing and for putting your trust in each and every one of us. Our journey together has been a roller coaster. Unfortunately, it is coming to an end. David, please.
Thank you, Fadi. What would I do without you? Thanks. So this is a bit personalized for me. As many of you know, I first came here in 1981 under USAID Grant 1651, Restoration and Repair of War Damaged Buildings and Institutions. And I've been back through a few of the altercations since then, after the Civil War, 2006, notably in 7. So I've been here, come back here for 4 years to manage this program. To manage this program here, and to use what I call a $5 word for my national staff, American word, vicissitudes. That's what we call it in the office. It's been an era of vicissitudes. It didn't start that way back in the end of 2016 and 2007. We were built around this Life USAID program was built around the idea of inclusivity, very powerful and particularly appropriate for Lebanon. And now I'll read a bit, since my staff always cautions me, I tend to meander. Maybe this will give me the necessary discipline. Inclusivity, the raison d'etre for Life, reached far beyond the usual economic metrics govern the unbanked, and into the existential imperatives to form a cohesive state out of the tragic Civil War and its recent aftermath. In our specific, that meant how the estimated 500,000 unbanked Lebanese, this is when I arrived, more now, could participate in the nation's formal economy, and by doing so could become both more aware and influential within the forces that affected the financial milieu. in which they sought to sustain themselves and their families. Quite unaware of what was to come, we, Life USAID staff and partners, we made progress in those first couple of years of life. We developed workable formulas with select retail commercial banks and with 8 members of the Lebanese Microfinance Association. Through both the application of fintech and other investments to make loans affordable and savings possible. Affordable loans and inclusivity are synonymous in this field. We also developed a new high-impact model to enjoin activist Lebanese civil society working in union in dynamic peri-urban communities of micro businesses to improve their productivity. They became known as regional revitalization hubs, first in Tripoli, then in Saida, then in the Bekaa. And finally, all the while, we work closely with the central bank to provide the policy framework to support our initiatives. And I would like to give, just parenthetically, a shout out to Doug's predecessor by one, Dr. William Butterfield, along with Rana and myself, who worked diligently on standing up these hubs about 2 years ago. It was really a joint effort. It was creative, and so far it shows great promise. Then, as you all know, on October 17th, 2019, the roof fell in. Inclusivity quickly came to mean saving thousands of micro businesses from collapse through the provision of deeply discounted credit financed through Life USAID. But also, and this is really the key message I'd like to leave here, but also refusing despair as an option, so that when the worst will have passed, and we know the next few years will be difficult, the estimated 150,000 micro and small owner managers can reemerge in a more modern and democratic Lebanon, where the legendary, and there's no hyperbole there, Lebanese entrepreneur can be married to an open, inclusive marketplace where her ingenuity could harness the new technologies in pursuit of unprecedented margins and national cohesion. So yes, I must say, take the liberty, and my renowned Lebanese team, we are believers in the future, in both the provision of affordable credit through the unfettered application of fintech, and in the power of the revitalization hubs in key peri-urban areas. We foresee a role in both domains, solve and transformation. The Lebanese partners are there and already managing this vision. More investment can bring it to scale. So I bid adieu. I hope I'm back, but at my age, some of the probabilities become less. I bid adieu to my fellow travelers. Rana, my God, how many hours? Amy, Eileen, Michelle, and now Doug recently arrived, and good luck to you. And my supervisor, Kat Cooley, back in headquarters, and her sidekick, Ian Weatherall. It hasn't been easy, but I do think we have made a positive difference. Finally, to all of those before me, to the staff, yes, I'm looking at you, Nicole, who have suffered my interminable speeches on
the Vermont taxpayers.
Yes, I'm from Vermont. And the taxpayers of 49 other states and Lebanon's vulnerables. For, as I kept repeating in that office constantly, in the end, they are our ultimate owners, that in-use beneficiary and that the guys I know, that Vermont taxpayer up in Northern Vermont. To life's partners in the audience who have accommodated my learning curve on how to get the job done. And I fortunately, from my past work here, I knew enough, I would say, to listen hard to them. And to my mentor, Youssef, who schooled me on the national dilemmas before us. He's not here with us because he has gone on to a higher calling. And I don't mean celestial. He's now, as you know, our Minister of Finance. So thank you all so much for coming here, and particularly Mission Director Eileen, Ambassador Shea, thank you so much, and Doug, thanks.
Thank you, David. Please welcome our panelists, Sylvana Lakkis, the President of the Lebanese Union for People with Physical Disabilities, LUPD, Marleine Daher, Michel Daher Foundation President, Dr. Mayada Baydas, EMKAN Executive General Manager, and Dr. Youssef Fawaz, Majmouaa CEO. The panel discussion will address some of the most prominent topics related to the future of inclusion and livelihoods in Lebanon. David, please.
Oh, okay, so we don't have all that much time, folks. I'm told we have about 25 minutes, and we have 4 distinguished panelists. And so what I have proposed is that I'm going to give a leading question to each one of the panelists in the different areas that the ambassador and I have spoken about. And they will say what they want to say. And then if others sitting around this table, partners, wish to add something or make a comment, they should. Please, though, remember, I want to give each of the panelists an opportunity to talk, so we'll keep it rather brief. So I start with Dr. Fawaz, the leader at Majmouaa, and my question, my prompt, is to what extent can MFIs continue to provide affordable loans to micro small businesses during the economic adjustments to come? Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, David. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. It is clear that not only the country is going through one of its most severe crises ever, but the microfinance sector, and by extension, most of its beneficiaries are also going through an extremely hard time adjusting to what seems to be a never-ending crisis. Already 7-8 months into the crisis, in the spring of 2020, the CGAP conducted a small survey among all MFI clients and came up with the astounding figure that 40% of our clients, and beneficiaries had fallen under extreme poverty. Essentially meaning that people who were micro entrepreneurs, who were able to have a small job prior to the crisis, who were able to borrow up to $1,000, $1,500, invested in their business, generate enough income to live reasonably well and pay back the loan, suddenly needed food subsidy to put on the table. That is the challenge we're facing today. And that challenge, which began by the beneficiaries being unable to put food on the table, if I may use the analogy, actually went up to the MFIs themselves. Suddenly, the microfinance sector, as individual MFIs or as a sector altogether, is facing an existential threat to its future. And it is my plea here today that if we are to recover from the crisis, not only the macroeconomic level, but at the level of the grassroots, at the level of all these micro entrepreneurs that are all over the country, from its south to its north, from its farthest remote areas, it is only the MFIs that will be able to reach these institutions. And we've been able to reach them because we've built that sector over 20 odd years of hard work, hard labor, to be able to reach 150,000 clients altogether, meaning roughly around 700,000 individuals if we include an average size of 5 per family. And this infrastructure, we shouldn't let it disappear. I mean, it has been built with hard work, with commitment, and it has delivered on a number of levels. And Majmouaa alone before the crisis had a portfolio of $100 million. That means $100 million were in the hands of micro entrepreneurs that were able to turn this money around by investing them in small businesses, generating income, and improve their livelihood. Today, they're facing a situation where with hyperinflation, economic volatility, huge differences in exchange rates, 3-4 exchange rates in the country, the place is a bit of a mess. And our clients and beneficiaries are having a hard time adjusting. One way to help the clients is perhaps to be able to allow them subsidized loans at this stage. I know it's anathema to the precepts of microfinance, but these are extraordinary circumstances. And we've done the test with the help of Life. They gave us, in the last few months, enough money to subsidize what was $1,500 loans. At the time when the demand has all but collapsed, we were able to give maybe 50 loans a day. Suddenly, with this, when we said to our beneficiaries, there is the possibility of you getting a subsidized loan, we sold 1,500 loans in 5 days. That gives you the sense of what this restarting the demand. That is one side. And I think the second answer to my question, and I will close on this, is given how much they've suffered and they need food subsidy to stay alive, I think we need to consider also as a kickstarting the economic cycle again for these segments to have a combination of toolkit, a grant, and a loan at the end. Again, because they need to be able to rebuild. Many of them have had to sell assets to survive. Many have sold the tools they used to produce so they can generate food and put it on the table. And we need to help them replace these assets again. And one way to think of that is to invest in helping them reacquire the tools they need to produce. One last note on this. I think the price of doing that subsidy is minute compared to the needs of what the macroeconomic reconstruction is going to take in the few dozens of millions of dollars when we're talking about the billions of dollars in this country. And yet, no one is more uniquely positioned to serve these marginalized segments than the microfinance sector through its network, through its loan officers, what we call the loan officers, who are from the community, in the community, across the country, in all its deepest reaches. I'll stop at this point. Thank you.
I would just add one thing, was we had a meeting together, Ali Hijazi and I, with the relatively new vice governor for inclusivity, Shaheen, and his comment was also in parallel to what you said was the idea of the social cohesion, that these micro businesses are the center of communities and neighborhoods across the country. And when you give them hope, it radiates from them to the people around their stores and shops. Ali, did you want to say something here on this since you work most closely with Majmouaa?
I want to thank you all again, Madam Ambassador, Madam USAID Mission Director, and David and the team for our efforts we put together for 5 years. Quickly to share that my experience with Majmouaa to implement this pilot program, Ali, to subsidize loans for micro entrepreneurs was actually very promising of an example on how to leverage USAID, US government investments, and strengthen and build on partnerships with the private sector, with existing capital that MFIs have, and that with existing demand. We were very surprised, as Dr. Youssef Fawaz said, on how Majmouaa was able to disperse over 1,500 loans for vulnerable women and youth for a couple $1 million in couple days. MFIs are the hope today for micro enterprises, as commercial banks are refraining from lending and providing access to finance. MFIs continued, and LMFA members in the middle of the crisis. And USAID played a critical role in supporting operational cost and sustainability for these MFIs. I hope that in the future we will continue this work together. And I want to thank again Majmouaa, EMKAN, and all LMFA members and staff who participated in this achievement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali. Well, we have another esteemed notable within this community of the MFIs, who's also the Vice President of the Lebanese Microfinance Association. It's Dr. Baydas, Mayada to most of us. And just a prompt question would be basically, we're going through some, hopefully, restructuring issues here. And they're only speculative now, but will involve the saving and loans landscape here for sure, commercial retail banks, and by extension, MFIs. And my question to you, Doctor, is what do you see, speculation, of course, on how this all comes down, the impacts will be on the unbanked citizens here in Lebanon?
Thank you, David. I will address the question, but first allow me to thank you and the team, the LIFE team, for an outstanding job over the past few years. Madam Ambassador, Madam Mission Director, and the team. This has been a truly a very conducive experience for all of us, having worked with this team. Remarkable joint efforts in order to achieve what we have accomplished. The short answer to your question, David, is that we need another life project. No, of course you didn't. And it just popped in my head, of course. The technical answer, very briefly, is that we definitely need to work in order to support the microfinance institutions. They are the conduit to work with the segment of the clientele of the Lebanese population. And as we all know, unfortunately, this segment has expanded very dramatically over the past couple of years. I think the financial sector, the landscape of the banking sector, as we all know, with the prevailing challenges, will be undergoing many changes. However, I think they will have their own set of concerns to work on with the private sector, whereas the microfinance institutions will have to cater to an expanded and larger community and revitalize and support that community through many innovations. However, to start with, I think support to the microfinance institutions themselves is due, because just like the banking sector, financial institutions or NGOs, be it, the financial position of these entities have been highly impacted. Though we may see that the entities themselves and their management teams are doing a remarkable job in terms of trying to meet the obligations they owe to the external investors, even to the local investors, their clients, and their repayments and the provisions they have had to extend have been exhausted almost at this point, or given the time lapse. I believe a lot of support in terms of injecting capital, be it trying to attract even equity from social investors, but more so leverage at this point, definitely from the donor community, with the current aspects of where the financial position is, has to be taken into consideration. Another point that is very eminent is the human capital and the capacities of these institutions. I think that's it's very important to be able to preserve that, and the turnover that has been experienced historically, traditionally, but more so over the past couple of years is very critical. Moving to the client, who is our center stage element and factor that we all cater towards, I think we have to look at not only the delivery of the financial institutions in a digitized fashion, which today we cannot postpone any longer, the regulatory environment in order to allow this type of service to be feasible today requires very much speedy and due attention, but at the same time also looking at innovations in terms of engaging our clients and engaging digitized crowdfunding perhaps, and many other innovations for digital wallets, digital financial services is also very critical. I think the coming phase will definitely have to entail many of those aspects in order to find the solutions that will be able to solve the current challenges. Thank you.
Does anybody have a follow-up comment or question for Mayada? Okay, I am going to basically turn now to someone at this table who was actually working with me way back when I arrived in 1980, 1981, 1982. And I don't want to embarrass you. She's received awards from the US Embassy in 2010 for her humanitarian, oftentimes heroic work. Back then, while the rights of the disabled were always at the forefront of her mind, she served humanitarian distributions to all people in need during the worst of the Civil War. And I was privileged to work at that time with her. And when I came back, immediately wanted to find a way to invest. And with Rana's help, we went down and we found a way. And it was in the domain of furthering persons with disability rights. And then when the explosion came, your great work there. My question to you is, again, given the difficult times ahead and the transformation that is sure to happen in this country, hopefully sooner rather than later and better, how do you see the opportunities and the necessity for inclusion of PWD rights, and which I might add, which are already legislated here in this country, but not practiced? Please, Sylvana.
Thank you, David. And first of all, I want to thank Madam Ambassador and Chief Director and the whole team, because really you've been there on time to stand by the Lebanese population and mainly by people with disabilities who suffer from neglect and marginalizations in a structural way in this state. The state was built in a way not to embrace diversity, even though diversity is a strong point for Lebanon. And everyone should know how to embrace diversity and how to reach out for a society that is based on equality and justice. You came in a time where we were trying, I remember our first project with you, we were trying to access our way towards the right of employment and towards the right of independent living. And we had that project that targeted, I think, 150 persons with disabilities from different areas, with whom we managed to prepare better for the jobs. And when I talk about jobs, I also remember our friend, Mr. Fawaz. We also worked with his organization to make a model for how a financial institute can do better in receiving customers with disabilities and employees with disabilities and beneficiaries with disabilities. And this, we consider a very important step to build on to go for macro level. For the, sorry, what was your question?
Just during these difficult times, do you see the sort of the opportunities and the challenges of keeping these rights issues alive and basically implemented within the legislation that already exists?
Yes.
Their access issues.
Yes. We have no way but to try very hard to change the challenge into opportunities. And here, we know that huge activism is going on from civil society, supported by international donors and society, to stand by and support the Lebanese community. In that way, we have a challenge. The challenge is we need to make sure that these initiatives are to be inclusive. And this is not just a wish, it's a package of duties that should be made in designing the initiative, in monitoring and managing it. And actually at this moment, we're trying very hard to make our voice reach and on time act, because timing is very important now. For example, when we talk about building back businesses, we need to make sure that disability etiquette is a familiar culture for whoever is engaged and contributing. We also need to deal with the accessibility issues, because unfortunately we don't have an environment that is a welcoming one. So the problem is not with the people who have disability. The problem is with the designing who did not take into account everyone's needs. And when we take into account the accessibility needs, we are doing good. We would be doing good for all, not just for people with disability. And I'm talking business here also. The other challenge is not to be faced with a traditional answer from whoever is active, that now it's not the time for strategic work. Now it's the time for relief and the emergency. It's true, but if we don't start to do from zero the steps that takes us into making opportunities, it will never happen. So 15% of the population can be very active and contributing to the economy and to the society in general. We need not to block on them. And if we don't consider this, again, I say, in planning, in preparing the people who are working in those initiatives, at least 25% of them should be capacity building for them should be provided, and we are ready to do this. In brief, there is a group of DPOs who can be your support, whoever would be believing in justice and equal society opportunity to help you technically make your business, make your achievement one that is embracing everyone. We're talking about lives here. We're talking, now you were mentioning the damage that happened to a number of businesses. How about those with disability? I'm not talking because they have disability. I'm talking about being a person with disability. We always had less access to resources, to everything. So it affects us much double. So we need to move to make sure that we reduce this discrimination at least and start to make enhancement. I do hope that every project that will be funded by the USAID should be designed and should be like preconditioned that whatever the initiative is to be funded, to make sure that is designed for all. And I agree with Mrs. Mayada, we need another life. We need you to open a new phase. No, really, because situation is like this and needed. And in the end, I want again to say we cannot reach peace unless we have justice. We cannot say we're tackling poverty and leave a big group behind. And the UN Convention for the Rights of People with Disability is there to guide us and to help us make the roadmap. And finally, I want to thank you for giving my colleague Ala to be one of your team, and I hope she can be the beginning for implementing the quota 3% for employing people with disability in Lebanon. Thank you. Sorry, maybe I talked too much, but I wanted to use the opportunity and to thank you again. Thank everyone who is here. And the team was really wonderful. And I want to thank also Rona, my colleague, who was running all the time up and down to do everything and fix everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvana. I just basically, you know, I get asked a lot about what distinguishes the United States, and for sure, as our president says, we have our shortcomings, but we have some great characteristics. And one of them is we work and have worked hard to be an inclusive nation. And I do believe that without including of women, but in this instance, person with disabilities, through, in my country, the American for Disabilities Act, that we would be a much less capable nation, my nation. And I do believe that Lebanon will not come to that sunshine we talk about, that renaissance, without actively implementing the existing laws and to bring this significant population into its economy. It's a growth issue. There's numerous studies in the United States by large corporations that indicate that persons with disabilities on average outperform the mean. So it's good for business. Thank you. Our last panelist, a good friend of USAID, not just Life, but other USAID contractors and NGOs, who represents our work with standing up these revitalization hubs that I talked about, these platforms, which, as I said in my short address, represent coalitions or unions of NGOs in particular geographical areas that work together under the leadership of one primary, and that's Mr. Bilal in Saida, that's Azza up in Tripoli, and that's Marleine Daher here, and her pretty revolutionary work with USAID monies in the Bekaa. So Marleine, thank you.
Hi, thank you, Mrs. Ambassador. Thank you, Mrs. Chief Director, for always standing beside the Lebanese people, especially during this crisis we are going through. And thank you, David, for believing especially in a brighter future for Lebanon. As a small summary, we implemented the Tech for Youth program through the Bekaa Hub in partnership, of course, with Life Projects, with the USAID fund. This program that spread a lot of hope and oriented the youth toward success in the tech and digital field. The idea behind this program was that the tech and digital education is becoming a right for everyone worldwide. And we do not want the Lebanese youth, who are the main asset for Lebanon, to stay behind, but to follow the pace of modernization that the world is witnessing nowadays, and become leaders in the field, stay in their villages and work with multinational companies. And once the situation starts to improve, to help in upgrading the Lebanese enterprises and help them to become competitive in the international market. And we believe that we as a foundation and as USAID and Life Project, we have a critical role to play in this. For that, we are in the process of starting a tech academy to help make the digital equity for everyone and to make the digital education accessible to all. And we are starting also an incubation center to help upgrade the skills of entrepreneurs in the tech field and connect them with companies, especially in California and in the US, as this opportunity will help them become business owners and create opportunities for their fellows in the field. And also, we saw that a co-working space is much needed during this tough time, because even those people who are working with from their villages with multinational companies are having many challenges these days nowadays because of the internet cut and the electricity. So we need to provide them with this co-working spaces so we can secure for them their work with multinational companies. It is much needed this time, because many of them, we are seeing them painfully leaving the country, even as they are working with multinational companies because of the internet. They are going to Jordan and to Turkey and to many countries nearby to have better internet connection and better electricity. So for that, we need to, I believe that USAID and mainly Life, if there is any other new Life, hopefully, to work on this and to help the Lebanese youth not to be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Marleine. Yes, we have it estimated 400,000 Lebanese entrepreneurs working just in the Gulf. And many, many of them providing ICT services there. And all of them, I think without exception, would rather be home doing it. And we need to provide the infrastructure and the regulatory environment for that to happen. This is the proper entrepot between Europe and all things East. And I look forward to the day when you can affect that. And you're at a leadership role in that. So thank you.
Finally, please welcome USAID Lebanon Mission Director, Eileen Devitt.
Thank you. Closing events are always bittersweet, but thank you all for joining us today. Those of you who believe, as we do, that microenterprise development can drive significant economic growth for Lebanon. On behalf of the American people, we're pleased to share the achievements of the Livelihoods and Inclusive Finance Expansion Project LIFE that invested in 40,000 marginalized microenterprises throughout Lebanon. The project effectively responded to the set of crises by offering access to business development services, in-kind grants to help microenterprises not only sustain their business operations, but also grow, expand, and improve the incomes and livelihoods. I would particularly like to applaud the women and youth-led businesses for their drive and ideas and for tapping into the project's resources to grow their businesses. It's been an inspiring journey to partner with our microfinance institutions to the benefit of marginalized businesses over the past 5 years. I'm confident that this support is crucial for their long-term sustainability and for Lebanon's economic rebirth. We know the road ahead is not an easy one, but we will remain a steadfast supporter of small businesses because they are a stellar example of resilience and hope. So thank you to David and to your team and to all of our partners for your passion for getting the job done and for helping me to better understand how to get it done here in Lebanon. Your advice and counsel has been very much appreciated. Thank you. And again, on behalf of the American people, including those in Vermont, thank you for achieving the impressive results in support of the Lebanese people. Thank you all very much for your work.
Thank you, Mission Director. Thanks, everyone. It has been a pleasure working with you all, and I hope we meet again soon. Before we head to the buffet right across the hall, I would like to invite you for a group photo to commemorate this event. We will take the photo this side. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.